do Unatana Tokyo in the morning.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I think we've that the time for that has passed now. So.
Yeah. You want to meet at 9?
Sure.
Are you taking the day off tomorrow, or just like the morning or something?
I told him I wouldn't come in. I may end up doing a little bit more from home in the afternoon. We'll see. I've been getting really bad sleep for the last like 5 days.
Oh, I'm sorry. That sucks.
Kind of inclined to say screw it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe take the time to just chill. Um,
It kind of helps that it's right after Labor Day this week, so it's sort of like almost seems like not that anyone really cares, but I can just feel like I'm not coming in on Tuesday. No one needs to expect it.
right, it's like you had an extended holiday weekend.
People are going to be coming up and down the street sideways.
Oh God, I don't think
At least a
so.
few people.
Wait.
Well, I know like Liam
Wait a
said
second.
Fred's been driving around the street and like
Yeah, Fred is coming in. Okay, that's right.
yeah, we got the snow as soon as we got out this morning.
Nice. Thank you for tuning in.
haShanah TV. This is haShanah sunrise. It's happening next to what seems to be just a lot. I know two. Yeah, I know. And I told those that's like my Hebrew belief for this temple is that instead of just singing once a year, let us let us all actually I've been wondering like I've been wondering with all of the holidays the last like for the last week uh if there's three holidays that rhyme with each other. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. Answering the phone every time I try to get hold of you. You say we have three holidays. Those are the holidays songs that listen to nice.
Tova. Shana Tova. A very, very good and healthy and sweet new year to all of you. We have come together on the screen, in person, online, dressed up in pajamas, wherever you are. We have cooked, bought, and maybe already eaten dinner. We're here. We're here. Looking around, I just want to take one moment to go over our COVID guidelines so that all of us can feel safe tonight. Please leave your masks on at all times. Please do not sing at any time. We will have plenty of readings together. If you can see the text in the book, this is your moment to raise your voice. You can clap, you can snap, you can stump. You might even get up and dance if the Spirit drives you so, but please do not sing. And before you reach out to, hug someone, grab someone's hands, whatever it is that you want to do, make sure that that person is comfortable. And so we start the new year, in person and gathered, online in spirit, with a little bit more caution than we would usually do, but still, under the same new moon, dark moon, waiting for the light of the flames to signal the beginning, the very beginning of yet another new year. A year in which we will pray together and sit together and walk together and hopefully also at some point eat and sing together again. And I would like to invite a person here to light the candles, someone whose voice you've heard quite a lot, and someone still who doesn't show up too often, just as herself. And I want to begin to say thank you to Amber Eichmann, who brings so much light into all of our lives. May you have a year in which you create a home full of light, a synagogue full of light, a heart full of light. And thank you, Amber. Oh, just hold on a second. I wanted to ask you one thing. Amber took a COVID test 10 minutes before we started the service. It was negative. It is really hard to sing with the mask. Are you all okay if she takes it off? She's far away. We have 3 air purifiers here with us on the stage. If there's anyone who is uncomfortable, she leaves it on. But I did want to ask you. Richard, you want her to keep it on? Oh, okay, good. You can drop the mask.
I'll keep it on right here.
Okay.
And Kyle also took one.
Okay, Kyle also took a test.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom Tov. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Please join me together on page 10, the upper part of the page. Creation's brightest light, the mystics say, was hidden at the dawn of time. But on this sacred night, the night of hope and joy, a glimmer of that light is here. In candles' flame, in children's eyes, in eyes aglow with wisdom's light, it shines in the faces of the ones we love, in grateful hearts in tears of loss, It lives in memories of goodness and in our own desire to do right, to try again, to build anew, to ask forgiveness, to make peace. Page 10, and you can join me. We enter this new year and look upon the beauty of these lights. So may the days of awe renew the light within us. Rosh Hashanah is a strange holiday. If Rosh Hashanah was a person and you would meet them on the street and you would ask them, how are you? They would say, I have mixed feelings, very mixed up feelings. Rosh Hashanah is called the Day of Judgment, Yom Hadin. We listen to the shofar blows, usually more than we will today, reminding us to rise in front of our Creator so that we can get examined, judged, and hopefully inscribed into the book of life, God's good book for the occasion. It's a book for all of those who walk in God's ways. It is usually, and it used to be, a day of awe and trembling, a day of fear of the impending judgment. And yet, it doesn't feel this way, and it's not anymore. In the 6th century BCE, one of our prophets, Ezra, looked upon his people. The people had just returned from a long exile in Babylonia. They had found home. They had rebuilt the fundaments of the temple. They had cleared up the houses of their ancestors. They had gathered again at his feet to relearn the Torah, to begin a new life, a new chapter in Jerusalem. They looked up to him, and their faces were full of seriousness, fear, regret over their sins. And he opened his mouth, and he said this, No, no, my people, that is not what I want you to do on this day. Go home. Go home to your families. Gather your loved ones around a table that is spread with a feast for the holiday. Celebrate, sing, exalt in being together and in being free to celebrate as Jews. Exalt because you made it back from exile, and because we're able to be together, and because we're able to be together as Jews. Recline. And so the holiday changed. Even though it opens a 10-day period of introspection and soul-searching, it invites us to immerse ourselves into hugs and laughter and voices of our loved ones. Even though it is called Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, be celebrated as a Yom HaMishpacha, a day of family, of friends, of connection, and of food. We celebrate not only the possibilities of the future, but also the fact that we overcame the constrictions of the past. Above all, it's a holiday on which we celebrate our resilience and ability, the very ability to celebrate. So today we look at each other in gratitude. Gratitude for still being here. Gratitude for being together. Gratitude for having Rosh Hashanah dinners, home-cooked or bought. Gratitude for being back partially in person, albeit in different and more cautious ways. Gratitude to be here, to breathe, to sit, to stand, to hold a hand. And so we say together, a blessing for the new year on page 19, and it is my honor to invite up our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Staffman.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, our forefathers and foremothers. Yehiratzon shenizka levirchotecha. May we know your blessings in this year 5782. Eternal One, bless us and the whole house of Israel with renewed life, happiness and peace, comfort and courage, resilience and strength. May the words of our heart be acceptable to you in the new year that stretches before us. We are forever grateful for the gift of life. Bitnat HaChaim, may it be God's will. Amen.
There are few lines in the Jewish prayer book that are better known than the Shema. Framed by blessings and introduced by a call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, the Shema sits at the core of the morning and evening services like a jewel in its settings. We learn in Midrash Rabbah, a collection of rabbinic teachings, that Moses learned this beautiful prayer from the angels and taught it to Israel. We dare not say it out loud completely because we're sinful and therefore unworthy of using an angelic formula. On Yom Kippur, however, when Israel elevates itself to the sin-free levels of angels, we do proclaim it out loudly, completely. The Shema, a prayer of angels. Today, as we begin the process of emptying ourselves from busy clutter, of cleansing ourselves from greed, jealousy, and hardness, we still do not say it completely aloud. And yet, as we move through those familiar lines, we might catch a glimpse of their absolute majesty. Those lines, simple and familiar, they incorporate what our people hold at its very, very core. Those are the lines that people say were their last breaths. Those are the lines that new parents whisper into the ears of their newborn babies. Those are the lines that let you know that you're home. Listen, Israel, listen. There are angels standing among us, and they listen too. Please rise for the Baruch Hu on page 20. Seated and join me on page 22. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passage of time. The stars arrayed across the sky reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shaping day and night. You sweep away day and carry the world into nightfall, setting day apart from nighttime. You are God of all we can perceive, and all that is beyond our perception. Living, eternal God, be our sovereign to the end of time.
Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'aravim.
Page 24.
We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are embraced by your ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 26.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
28.
Ya lai 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 la lai 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 la lai. Ya lai lai la lai la lai la lai. Ya lai 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 la lai lai.
34.
Ya lai lai la lai la lai lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osefele. Nora tehilot osefele. Malchutecha ra'u banecha. Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe. Ze Elianu ve'amru. Ze Elianu ve'ameru. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Ya lai 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 la lai lai lai. Ya lai lai la lai la lai la lai. Ya lai 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 ya la lai 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 la lai. Ya lai 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 ya la lai lai.
And so we arrive at the other side of the sea, at the beginning of the new year, at the other side of the Jordan, or wherever we feel that we arrived at that point in time. And we look back at the paths we have walked, the things we have done in the last 12 months. And indeed, so much has happened that it is almost impossible to really understand where we were 12 months ago, what the life that we lived was like, what our fears were, what our thoughts were, what the news were dominated by. This is a moment in the service that maybe reminds us a little bit of the people who we lost, the people who went through great hardship over the last month, the people for whom the reality in which we are relatively comfortable is still painful day to day. This is a mishaberach for those who climb daily into their cars, buses, subways, and trains. For those who lost their jobs, homes, and food. For those anxiously waiting for what the future will bring. This is a mishaberach for those who lost loved ones, colleagues, and friends, in loneliness, in helplessness, without us noticing. This is for the addicts, the ones in need of medication and vaccination, the ones in need of group support and therapy, who struggle with the absence of healthy habits. This is for the children, the elderly, and the ones with intellectual disabilities who do not understand why their lives suddenly and so drastically changed. This is for the doctors, the PAs, and the nurses who care every day and being exhausted, for the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated. This is for the ones who faced hells of violence and abuse in their homes without us being able to hear their screams. This is for the ones who our free meals did not reach, the ones whose big dreams had to shrink, the ones whose futures are forever altered. This is for the ones who needed to stay home, coughing and gasping for air, the ones so often lonely in their hospital beds, while others could rest. This is a mishaberach. May the God who is a source of blessing remember the crying voice of God's children, suffering, anxious, and numb in their pain. God, hear our pain. God, heal our pain. El na refanala. Page 245.
May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Page 37, please read with me. Rosh haShanah in the pines. Darkness settles slowly across the horizon. The new year rises before us, its fragile moon awaiting our embrace. Heaven and earth entwine in their annual dance of recreation. A fissure appears in the firmament tonight, an entryway into new beginnings. Out beyond the swales, the sea expands and contracts, keeping time to the thrumming of the universe. Under this Rosh Hashanah sky, the path before us is uncertain. All we can do is hold each other tight as we make our way home. Page 15.
תיקו בחודש שופר בכסה ליום חגנו, כי חוק לישראל הוא משפט לאלוהי יעקב. תיקו בחודש שופר בכסה ליום
He is behind the curtain. At the new moon, at the full moon, for our feast day, sound the shofar, for that is the law of Israel, the way of the God of Jacob. You might have noticed that it doesn't help you to follow these pages. You don't know when anything will happen and when we're done, but you will just need to trust me. This is the time for the sermon. So settle in. I'm going to talk for a while. The time has come. Shana Tova. Tik'u b'chodesh shofar. Blow the shofar at the beginning of this new month, on the dark moon of our festival. It's here. May we all have this very good, very new, very healthy, sweet new year. Like every new year, we stand at the beginning of this one with open minds and hearts. We're human, we can't stand here any other way. We know that we know nothing, but we're full of hopes and wishes, plans and resolutions, and a strange and sweet sense of accomplishment. We did it. Some of us might also think quite anxiously about the image of God's book of life, now open. Will we find our names in it by the end of Yom Kippur? Will all of us survive and thrive in the next 12 months? Or, if you want to be a little more creative, what kind of a year do you think you will have ahead of you? In what way is your name inscribed in this book? Orange glitter? Arial 12? If you were to make a wish list for this book, for this year, what would be on it, and how long would that list be? We often look into the future with excitement. However, this year is special. It invites us not only to look into the future, it is an invitation to look at the present very, very carefully. This day, today, marks not only the beginning of just any new year, it marks the beginning of a Shemitah year, something that is very beautiful in Jewish law. What's beautiful about that, you may ask? Honestly, you might ask this question whether or not you know what a Shemitah year actually is. So to begin with, let me just tell you what a Shemitah year is. And then after that, I'll tell you why I think that there is something beautiful about it. The Shemitah year in biblical law, and it's mentioned 10 times in the Hebrew Bible, is a year that was skipped in the agricultural cycle in the land of Israel and nowhere else. Which means, if you think about it, much more than that. It's every 7th year. But what that means is, let's assume that in the summer of year 6, just before Rosh haShanah, and the reality is that for some crops you would stop even earlier, you would stop. You would stop sowing, you would stop harvesting, you would just stop engaging with the land. And we can assume that you would be just fine for this very first winter. Then in year 7, you would not be allowed to work the land at all. No strategic harvesting. You'd only be allowed to take just what your family and your friends need. And everybody else's too, because the land in this year belongs to no one. You would be allowed to take what's naturally growing. In all likelihood, you would be fine for the summer, but the following winter would already be really, really hard. And then in year 8, you would be allowed to sow and plant again. You might have some crop, but not too much, because you were not allowed to prepare the land during the previous year. You, the landowner, you might be fine, but the people depending on you will most likely be much less fine. And so, only in year 9 will you and all the people living with you and around you be back to normal. In all likelihood, some people might have starved to death in this scenario. There is, thankfully, maybe, not real evidence that those agricultural laws have ever been fully observed in biblical times. However, when the first Jewish settlers returned to the land of Israel in the 20th century, the Israeli chief rabbinate was quick to order a hekel mechira, an ease to sell, which allowed Jewish farmers to sell their year for exactly this 1 year, and boom, you were allowed to harvest again. In addition to that, another aspect of the Shemitah year is that every debt is going to be nullified. Every kind of debt. This idea sounds great, but only at first sight. The natural consequence of this law was that everyone lending money would press everyone borrowing money to return the complete money just before Rosh Hashanah, or that they would refuse to lend money altogether was the magical date coming closer. And that is the reason that Rabbi Hillel in the 1st century put a law in place that is called posbul. According to this law, the individual debt would be transferred from the lender to the court. That way, no one would own the money to an individual, but to a court. And the court was kept in place throughout the entire Shemitah year. The interests of the lenders would have been preserved, and the debtor would be able to return their debt on a much slower pace. So Hillel, with this law, stabilized the financial market of his time, but he also effectively nullified the original intention of the biblical law, a society established on total financial equity. I'm not standing here asking you to cancel all debt others might have with you. Neither do I want you to approach your lenders and teach them about Shemitah. You can, why not? But don't expect too much. I'm also not asking you to turn for an entire year into fruitarians. Some of you might already be fruitarians, and that's really great. Most of you probably are not, and that's also just fine. I'm standing here because I want to talk to you about 2 things that I think we can learn from the laws of Shemitah. First of all, that law invites us to learn one thing, to look at things as they are, without trying to improve them, to beautify them, or to fix them. We don't fix, beautify, or improve during a Shemitah year. We see the landscape of our lives as it is. We see what we accomplished to do, but we're not allowed to add a single more touch. With this, the law teaches us to sit with the present, whether in pride or in discomfort, anger or hope. We have to sit and take it in, the fruit of our labor or lack thereof, the relationships we have created or not, the ability to accept and cultivate ourselves or not. More than a year of immediate changes and improvements, this year might be a year of growing acceptance of what there is. And secondly, the law invites us into a special relationship with the land. I'm standing here tonight just as much as your student than as your teacher. Because the truth is that most of you spent much more time in the land than I have in the last years of my life. You go for walks, you fish and ski, you hike, you bike, you garden, you have coffee on your lawns, and you hear the sounds of birds and wind and tree crowns almost every day. In the last weeks, many of you have told me about your reasons to move to Bozeman at some point in your lives. And very often the land and the landscape itself was one of the reasons, one of the things that grabbed you by the ankles and whispered, "Stay." Many of you might know very well what I mean when I say that you may find God not only in synagogues, but also, and even more so, in the hot air on a mountaintop, in the quiet of an early morning sunrise, in the sound of the wind rustling leaves, and in the crunching sounds of freshly fallen snow under your soles, and maybe in the taste of raspberries. Being outside, taking in the quiet, is a good starting point to do both. To look at what there is without changing it, and to build or just deepen a connection with the land. You might ask yourself, Is this even Jewish? Why is she talking about the land on Rosh Hashanah? What do we, the Jews of Montana, have to do with this land conservation law that is only applicable to the land of Israel? There is the very obvious reason that today is the birthday of this world. So there is literally no better day in the year to talk about the very earth we're living on. But I also want to tell you another story. The story is about one of our greatest sages, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hokunus, about whom it is said that he never forgot a single word of Torah he once learned. The story goes like this. What were the beginnings of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hokunus? At the age of 22, he had not studied any Torah. His father was very rich and had many plowmen working for him. One day, Rabbi Eliezer's brothers were plowing arable ground in a valley where he was plowing a stony spot on a hill. Presently, he sat down and wept. His father asked, "Why are you weeping? Are you distressed because you have to plow a stony plot? From now on, you will plow arable land." But he sat down on the arable land and wept again. The father asked, "Why are you still weeping? Are you distressed because you are plowing arable land in the heat of the valley?" Rabbi Eliezer says, "No." The father, "But why are you weeping?" Rabbi Eliezer, "Because I wish to study Torah." The father, "But you're already 22 and you wish to study Torah? Take a wife. She will bear children for you and you will take them to school." Nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer resolved, "I will go and study Torah in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai." His father retorted, "You will not get a taste of food until you will have plowed the entire furrow." Rabbi Eliezer got up early and plowed a full furrow, but then his heifer fell and broke his leg. Saying, "My heifer broke his leg for my sake," he quickly took off and went to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in Jerusalem. It is said that day was the eve of Shabbat, and he had tasted nothing from 6 hours before Shabbat until even 6 hours after the Shabbat's departure. As he was walking along the road towards Jerusalem, he saw a pebble in the land he had cultivated the day before. He picked it up and he put it in his mouth. When he came before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he sat down and wept again. "Why are you weeping?" said Rabbi Eliezer. "Because I wish to study Torah." "Have you never studied it?" "No." So Rabbi Yochanan began to teach him the Shema, the Amidah, the grace after meals, and 2 rules of law every day. On the Shabbat, Rabbi Eliezer repeated the prayers and the rules until he memorized them. 8 days he kept it without eating a thing until the foul odor of his mouth attracted the attention of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who asked, "Eliezer, my son, did you eat anything at all today?" Silence. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai repeated the question. Again silence. "By your life, today you'll eat with me." Rabbi Eliezer said, "But I already ate at the place where I stay." Rabbi Yochanan said to his disciples, "As you live, look into that matter." So his disciples went around the streets of Jerusalem, inquiring at the inns, "Do you have a guest who is a scholar? Do you have a guest who is a scholar?" Their reply was no, until they came to a woman who said yes. They asked, "Does he anything eat here? Does he eat anything here?" She says, "He has a sack into which he puts his mouth and appears to suck from it from a leather wine bottle." They asked, "Show it to us." She brought them the sack. When they opened it, they found it full of earth. I'm telling you this little confusing story today because Rabbi Eliezer did 2 remarkable things. When he left home, he picked up a little pebble and put it in his mouth. He kept it there for hours, maybe even days, sucking on it, tasting it, taking in its minerals. The pebble was a part of the land, of the home that he took with him when he departed for his great adventure. And then, once he arrived at the new place, he filled a bag with dirt, with land from the new place, and used it as his pillow, again, to suck on it and inhale it every single night, thereby making the tastes and minerals of the new place his own, gradually getting used to the new surrounding. What a lunatic, you might say. Ridiculous. Obviously, he just had nothing to eat. True. And even though he was no lunatic in any way, but quite the opposite, he surely knew nothing about minerals. But he was a farmer, and he knew a lot about dirt and earth and land and home. And wherever he went, that knowledge and that connection to the land accompanied him, and he let the land and the earth sustain him. The Hebrew word for earth and land is Adamah. The word most closely relates to the word that most closely relates to this word is Adam, and that is us. We are Adam, human beings, taken from the earth, as the second narrative of our creation myth is telling us. Adonai, our God, formed human beings from the dust of the earth. God blew into our nostrils the breath of life, and we became a living being. And that is happening today, on Rosh haShanah, the 5th day of creation. This is what we are, creatures filled with God's breath, but taken from and connected to the earth, a mix of air and earth, of thoughts, emotions, feelings, instincts, and sensations, a living being, part of the earth. We are, thus says the Torah, the earth's closest relative. We do not only live on it, we came from it, come from it every day that we breathe, eat, move, and touch. It keeps us alive, it is our home, it reacts to our deeds, and it is ultimately not someone who needs us. It is us who need her. The story of Eliezer ends like this. Then they asked that woman who was hosting him, "Has Eliezer eaten anything in your place today?" She replied, "No. We thought he was eating at his teacher's house." Thus they realized that he had not eaten for 8 days. They went and reported to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who then returned to Rabbi Eliezer and said, "Alas for you, Eliezer, so greatly neglected in our midst. But I say to you, even as foul breath rose out of your mouth before me, so shall the fragrance of Torah issue out of your mouth, travel from one end of the world to the other." And then Rabbi Yochanan set up regular meals for Rabbi Eliezer, and he was healed. Eventually, Rabbi Eliezer replaced the earth with Torah, which is the Talmud's way of telling us that earth and dirt are not enough. It takes Torah to live a life fulfilled. About this part, you don't need to worry, though, because you're here, and that's already covering the Torah part. The story of Rabbi Eliezer has accompanied me for many years of my life, though, since 2012, when I learned it for the very first time. It's a story about wanderers and seekers, of people, of land, of home and yearnings, and of the ability to have it all, as long as you're doing things the right way. Listening to the ways you are destined to do, doing them gracefully and with respect to the place and the people who made you what you are today. And so we're sitting here at the beginning of a new year. Nothing in the world will radically change over the next 49 hours, or the next 10 days, or even the entire next year. Nothing, probably not even we. Only maybe one thing will be different, and that is our attention to the voice of the land and the earth surrounding us. Nothing than our attention to the lives that we have built and the ways they are products of both earth and Torah, our material desires and comforts, our aspirations and the things that light up our hearts. As we're standing and sitting here, we are ready and prepared, muchanim und zmanim, to listen to silence, bird songs, dogs barking, leaves rustling, snow crunching, water rushing, grass blades whispering, flames crackling, shofars sounding, Torah whispering, God calling, inner voices speaking up. And we will. Maybe not every day, but every now and then. And maybe those are the moments that you will remember one thing happening here today. One thing that will remind you of an ancient law declared void and still never forgotten. A law that calls us to acknowledge the present. A law that calls us to acknowledge that the earth speaks, that it sings and that it whispers to us, that it provides us with pockets of silence and rest and freedom, and that it too can teach us some wisdom about who we are ourselves. This is a blessing that has usually not been said for for centuries. So please join me. It's very easy. It goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. And then it goes, lehadlik ner shel shnat shmita. Blessed are you, King of this and all other worlds, who blessed us with your callings and who accompanies us as we light the candle of a year of Shemitah, a year of skipping and of letting go. Shana Tova, Shnat Shemitah Tova. Have a good and sweet and peaceful year. Please rise for the Amidah, a silent prayer in the light of those 3 candles burning for us. We begin.
ועמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגאולה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יש מרבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשא בריחו לילה ולילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
Page 42. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. 66.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon L'chol haShalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon L'chol haShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Besefer Chaim bracha v'shalom u'farnasa tova. Nizacher v'nikatev lefanecha. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום.
Please be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai oseh haShalom. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei teiveach ve'imru Amen.
every year is a year of renewed efforts. Every year anew, we build and expand our homes, our families, our friendships, our careers, our abilities. Every year, we witness firsthand the astounding fact that as human beings, we are always capable of more than we thought we could do. And yet, our tasks never get finished. And yet, there is always something remaining to do. And yet, we never completely understand just what anything is about. And it is to this certainty, the only certainty that we have in this world, that we can never be too certain of any fact other than its mystery, that our tradition invites us right now to rise up to. Rise, 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 because there is something bigger than us in this space, in this very moment. Look at our broken, miraculous beauty. Surrender to the knowledge that we will never fully know. Acknowledge that there has always been a tacit feeling of being called in a certain direction. That we walk towards that all throughout our lives, to greet what is right and wholesome, and to arrive at someplace home. Avinu Malkeinu, to our God who is beyond everything. Please rise.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu.
74.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, ve'alol aleinu, v'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kal dever, v'cherev v'ra'am, me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kal lechol tzar, umastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu besefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, chodesh aleinu, chodesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Hareim, Hareim, Keren, Yisrael Amecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Haneinu v'Haneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim, asei manu, asei manu. להושיענו, אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו.
Please be seated. It is my great pleasure to invite Fred Leopold to the Bema. He's going to speak a little bit about as the head of membership, but he's also going to speak just as Fred Leopold, and I'm very grateful for both.
Thank you, Rabbi. There is only one Jew left in Afghanistan. Zabulon Simontov, almost 70 years old, lives alone on the second floor of the building that is the synagogue in the Flower District of Kabul. I wonder, can something be called a synagogue if there's no assemblage or teaching happening within its walls? In any event, I suppose it can still be called a temple, because every Saturday, Zabulon ascends the Bema and reads a portion of the Torah. Mostly he's alone. Sometimes there might be a visiting Jewish journalist or two to pray along. In reality, though, Zabulon is a congregation of one. It was not anti-Semitism that caused the Jews of Afghanistan to seek the welcoming and more potential-laden shores of Israel, Europe, and the USA. It was the rise of communism that came with the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan that convinced the Jewish population that it was time to go. After a major exodus of the Jews in the 1960s, the population continued to dwindle down through the decades until now there's only Zabulon Simontov, from a country where in the 1800s there were 40,000 Jews, now just one. It's too easy to say, that's Afghanistan. It can't happen here, not in Bozeman. Sure, it's improbable, but consider that by 2050, the percentage in North America of the world's total Jewish population is expected to dramatically decrease, as it will in all parts of the world, except in the Middle East and North Africa. Closer to home, in 1899, there were 2,500 Jewish people living in Montana. In 2020, there were about 1,500. Butte, reputedly the wealthiest city in the country in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, was home to 3 temples serving the religious needs of several hundred Jewish families. Today, perhaps there are a dozen Jewish families in Butte struggling to keep the remaining temple, B'nai Israel, and that was dedicated in 1904, to keep it alive. The news here in Bozeman is far better. Congregation Beth Sholom's current affiliates number 130 adults, up from a bit more than 100 over the last several years. If it was communism that convinced the Jews to emigrate from Afghanistan, it might be said that it has been literally and figuratively greener pastures that have brought an influx of people to Montana, many Jews among them. Beth Sholom has been a beneficiary of that tide of people, and we have risen to that occasion. We offer the talents and knowledge and unbelievable caring of our wonderful resident rabbi, Sonia Pills, and cantorial soloist, Amber Eichmann. We also offer the intellectual give and take of our weekly Torah study group, along with the once each month book club meetings, the camaraderie of our Brews for Jews get-togethers, and a very active and involved Hebrew school, the Shalom Kids, amongst so many other activities. But I won't dwell on those aspects of Beth Sholom congregational life. I will simply ask you to look at the people around you this evening, mostly folks whom you know, who always make you feel welcome. Oops. I got it. Who always make you feel so welcome at Beth Sholem, and who are your Jewish family here in Bozeman. They and you are the real secret of Beth Sholem's success. Famed local mountain climber Conrad Anker often says, if you're not early, you're late. If I can paraphrase him, I would say, if a congregation is not growing, it's declining. Our legacy here in Bozeman is going to be what we make of Beth Sholem. Many of us, maybe all of us here tonight, know some of the many Jewish people in the Gallatin Valley area who are unaffiliated with any temple. Won't you please tell them what treasures Beth Sholem offers? Please let them know of the brotherhood and sisterhood to be found here. And please put us in touch with them. Together, let's grow Beth Sholem. Thank you, and Lashana Tova. Thank you, Rabbi. It's all yours.
Thank you, Fred. And I think I can speak for all of us saying that the time and energy and efforts that Fred is putting into growing the life of this temple are breathtaking and seemingly endless, even to someone who works for it full time. So thank you, Fred, and thank you for bringing both your words and your wit and your wisdom to this temple, even though at least the wit sometimes is very hidden. I also want to all of you, I want to say, please come tomorrow, because tomorrow another pillar of this congregation is celebrating his birthday. And I won't tell you who it is until tomorrow. Towards the end of almost every Jewish service, we sing Aleinu. It is upon us to bow down now. It is upon us to acknowledge you. We are grateful. We are joyful. It is upon us to continue our building. It is upon us to start anew. It is upon us to make the world better. It is upon us to never let anything be greater than you. On us, on us, on us, on all of us together. Please join us on page 82. And please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula leotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad.
Please join me on page 87, the reading Life After Death. Life after death. These things I know, how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them. So that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one, and the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps in through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it, And in the spring, the rabbits find it and build their nest inside the dead tree, so that nothing is wasted in nature or in love. At this time of the year, in the month of September, this congregation remembers Alfred Ronder, grandfather of Ruth Stafford, Geraldine Trachtenberg, mother of Sharon Tholt, Shirley Desnick, mother of Laurel Desnick, Rebecca Marie Nollick, daughter of Jim and Linda Nollick, sister of Benji Nollick, Sam Dornberg, brother of Maury Dornberg, Judith Ake, mother of Dennis Ake, Molly Freeberg Franklin, grandmother of Nikki Fink, Paul Rosenthal, husband of Barbara Rosenthal Erickson, Lawrence Eagle, father of Stephen Eagle, and Alan Miles, uncle of Emily Williams. We'll read the full list in the days to come. Please add now any names that might not be on this list that you want to be added now. Gail Hoover. Please join me on page 90. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועל מה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם, ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. 92. When Ezra and his politician Nehemiah called the Jews in that 6th century BCE to the ruins of the former temple, they erected a wooden platform. They brought out all the Torah scrolls that they had, and they started to read them to the people, women and children, widows and orphans, elderly and sick. And they all listened, and they all learned. They were there together, learning some Torah, reclaiming and relearning what was theirs from the beginning. Today is such a day of renewed commitments to this earth, to this community, to our families, to ourselves, maybe also to our God. To all of these, to ourselves, I want to say, let's do this together. One more year, one more round, l'chaim, for the sake of life. Page 96. Let me do the Kiddush representing all of us. Baruch atah Adonai, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. המוציא לחם מן הארץ. I wanted to say a great many things about the fact that the challah is round, but they didn't have round challah while crumbs anymore. So just to know that the challah was supposed to be round, symbolizing the fact that our year is round, that we're dancing together in a cycle and circle in time, now beginning a new one, as opposed to the linear time that the rest of the world is living in. This is the moment for a last blessing. If you sit next to someone you love, and I'm assuming you do, because otherwise you wouldn't sit next to each other anymore, please take each other by the hand, or just look at each other just for a second. We're beginning the year together. If you have kids here, that is the moment when you maybe want to draw them a little closer. If they're upstairs, never mind. Just think of them. I want to share a blessing with you that is just as much a blessing from me than it is a blessing from you to me, and from you to every single person in this room. Just take a moment. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May God protect you and bless you. May you walk in God's light, and may the light be a light of kindness and community. May God's light shine upon you, and may you live in peace. If there are any kids in the room, they can come to the front and get a little bit of challah, and maybe sing the song with us because they learned it at Shalom Kids. And if there are no kids in the room, then we're just going to sing it for you. This is the moment where you might get ready to leave. If you want to gather and wish Shana Tova, please do it outside of the Ellen Theater, so that if you take your mask off, you'll be in fresh air.
L'shana tova tikatevu, l'shana tova tikatevu, tikatevu, tikatevu.
May we all be inscribed for a very good and very sweet and very fabulous New Year. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. Jake, I hope it wasn't too long.